Hi, marketing girlies. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly by Sky Society. Today, we're going to sit down and chat all about how to get and ask for a raise. It's just going to be you and me today. Feel like I keep saying this, but I do want to do more solo episodes. I see how you girls are listening to those quite a bit, and the way that we do these, if you haven't done or haven't listened to one before, it's going to be short, actionable, to the point. Open up your notes app, grab your pen. Everything that I'm going to share today is hopefully stuff that you can directly implement in your career. So we're going to get into that in just a sec. But before we jump in, just a quick little catch up with you girls. If you haven't noticed already, we've started to switch to doing some of the Marketing Girly episodes in person. So far to date, Marketing Girly has been an entirely virtual podcast. I record with my guests on Zoom. I'm based in Austin, Texas. A lot of my guests are in LA, New York, or honestly all over the country. I've even interviewed guests that are international, and doing it on Zoom has just allowed for me to totally broaden the reach of the podcast. However, just like with most things, there's just some stuff that you can't get when you're recording virtually and not in person. So I did a very first test of recording the podcast in person. I flew to California. I'm very grateful my family lives in Southern California. So to record in LA, I got to stay with them, and I drove up to LA for a day, rented out a studio, and recorded with multiple guests back to back. It was super hectic, super crazy. Being a host definitely takes a lot of focus and energy, and so I underestimated how much effort it would be to do them all back to back, but I feel like I didn't quite have much of a choice because I knew that Saturday was a good day to record with podcast guests, since a lot of our guests have in-person, or not even in person, but just full-time jobs. It's harder to do it during the week, so Saturday would be best. And then also hanging out with my younger siblings if they have jobs and school. It was tough to be away for a Saturday when they're also busy during the week, and the only times they're free are for the weekend. But it was totally worth it. It was so much fun. Sydney from Base was the very first in-person episode that I published. It's episode 172, The Career That Came From Believing Anyway. She's amazing. So if you haven't listened to that already, you can actually watch it. So it's a video podcast on Spotify, and we upload all of our podcasts to YouTube as well, even the virtual recordings. So if you wanted to watch them there, you can, but hers is extra special because it's uploaded on YouTube and it's an in-person recording. So we'll have a couple more of those sprinkled throughout. And then we also made a TikTok page dedicated to those social clips called Marketing Girly Pod. Yeah, Marketing Girly Pod. So if you want to see those clips on social. So just a quick update on that. It's been so much fun. I absolutely love it. I really want to find a way to record with more guests in person. I'm going to try to do that with some Austin guests, and then definitely going to make going to LA more of a routine, maybe even going to New York. It definitely is expensive to also record in person. So that's just something I'm trying to figure out, but I absolutely loved it. I hope you girls loved it too. And if you did, let us know so we can keep doing more of those. So that's my update for you today. Let's get into recording and talking about today's topic, which is getting a raise. If you are watching this on YouTube, you might also notice that I've got a different background. I'm not sure if I've recorded a solo episode with video in a while, but I have a bookshelf and a bookcase behind me, and it's got a bunch of Marketing Girly hats that we're going to release very, very soon. We're going to do a little drop for those and all of my books. So this is still a work in progress, but I finally have an office after almost 5 years of doing Sky Society. So very excited, very grateful. And I'm recording with you girls in that office today. So and by the way, office is just 2-bedroom apartment, and one of the rooms is an office. One day we'll get to an actual not retail space, but an actual office. But for now, we're just in my apartment. All right, keep getting off track. Let's get to the episode. Let's get to our topic today about raises. So something that I think a lot of us want for the jobs that we have is to get paid more, to get a title increase, and to feel like we're moving up and we're going in an upward trajectory. Actually, one of the topics that we touched on in an episode with Sydney is about raises and asking for them. So I want to talk about what to do when you're actually asking for the raise with your boss, but also all the stuff that leads up before that. It is my belief that asking for a raise starts the very first day you get the job. Asking for a raise, only like 15% of it is what you actually say on the day that you are asking your boss. 85% of it is everything that you do leading up to that moment. So let's break it down. So the first thing that is so important for you to get a raise is to understand what you need to do to get a raise. Now, that may sound silly. However, every single company is different. And this happens all the time with different guests that I interview, and they talk to me about their job title and their responsibilities. And depending on the company, even somebody with the same exact job title can have an entirely different set of responsibilities and expectations. And so for you, when you start a job, it is so important that you not only understand what your responsibilities are, but you understand which of those responsibilities are most important to your boss or your manager. All right, so you're going to start your job right. They're going to tell you all these things that you're doing and all these things that are, going to be on your plate. What you need to ask are the right questions to figure out of the, 20, 50, 100 things you're doing, which ones actually matter. Because not all of your responsibilities are the same. So the first thing I would do, now maybe you don't have a job yet, maybe you have a job and you've been there for a while. So if you can't do this at the very start of your job, like the first month of your job, you can do this right now. And the next time you have a little check-in with your boss, I would want you to ask like, hey, I've got, a bunch of different things that are on my plate and, I'm enjoying working on all of them. I just want to know which ones do you feel like are most impactful or the ones that my priority should go to first, if you don't already know. Okay? There's also sometimes an issue where certain responsibilities that you have may take a lot of time. And so in your head, you feel like they're the most important because they take the most amount of time. However, that's usually not the case. Usually what's more important may not be the same thing that takes you the most amount of time. So, for example, let's say you are I feel like when I give examples, I'm not going to hit my point on the nail. Okay. Or hit my idea on the nail. Okay. Let me give you just like a random little example. Let's say that you're doing something, you work in marketing and you have a lot of different responsibilities. So one of your responsibilities is like designing flyers in Canva or designing some marketing materials in Canva. It may take you a long time to do that. And if you use Canva, you know that it can get easy to get lost in Canva, making it perfect, adding all the elements that you want, re-editing it, and you might have a lot of fun doing it. And it may take you like several hours to design one post on social. However, your boss may not really care about the amount of time you're spending to create a single piece of content. They might care about your month-over-month follower growth or engagement per post. And so that might mean that maybe it takes you X amount of hours to design this really elaborate social post, but is it really helping you drive the bottom line number or the big KPI that really does matter? I hope that helps clarify, but that's just like the first example that came to my head, but there could be a lot of those things. And so it's really important to understand what actually matters and what's going to move the needle. And depending on how big your company is, your boss has a boss and they have a boss. And if we go up multiple layers, at the end of the day, the company wants to make more money. Okay. Most businesses, if we're just being blunt about it, want to grow. They want to increase revenue. And so part of your responsibility in some capacity, your biggest KPI likely ties to revenue. So if you can show, and this is why I'm kind of going through this importance of asking what's most important for your role, because if you can tie back how what you do makes the company more money, it's a lot easier to justify your raise. Bigger companies care about this more. All right, the bigger the company, the more likely you have to kind of justify that you're tied to revenue some way to ask for more money, or that you're tied to genuinely helping the company grow to be able to ask for a raise. Smaller companies, it can work a bit different because there's, I think, a lot more factors that go into play. But if you're working for a really large company, there's a lot of checks and balances and things that go into asking for a raise. Multiple people need to approve it. Multiple people in different departments might need to approve it. And the easiest thing you can do is give your boss the best case possible to say, hey, Samantha really deserves a raise. She, helped do XYZ, grow us by X% here, X% there, and make that case really easy. So the first thing you're doing is getting really clear about what responsibilities actually are the most important. All right? You also should be quite direct and let your boss know that you do want a raise. So not every year, maybe you're going after a salary raise, right? Maybe some years your goal might be to get a promotion raise, or, promotion meaning that you have a new job, a new title. Some years it might be that you want to get a salary bump. It can look different, right? Promotions can look different. It can be a combination of the two. But let your boss know where you want to go and what your career goals are. And if you're unclear, also let your boss know, like, hey, I really love these responsibilities, but I'm not quite sure how that looks like in my future. But I really just want to express that these are the parts of my job that I'm really loving. I think it's a big mistake that sometimes we assume, like, you get to the 1 year mark or the 2 year mark or the 3 year mark, and you assume that just because it's been a year, you deserve a raise, and you expect your boss to tell you that, hey, we're going to give you a raise, versus putting the responsibility on yourself to go and ask for that. So when you start, you are going to get very clear about what is most important, what KPIs truly matter, and throughout this entire year leading up to whatever year you are, right, we're leading up to this date where you're going to ask for a raise, is really going above and beyond and not just doing what is asked of you. I think that is another mistake. Sometimes we think if we just do exactly what we're asked of, then we should deserve a raise because we did what we were told. However, you should be going above and beyond and doing things that are not asked of you, because those are the things that are going to make you get noticed and stand out from everybody else on your team. And a really easy way to do that is just like in your job, if you spot something that you feel like could be improved, or you have an idea and you want to execute it, even though it's not part of your responsibility, doing those things is super helpful. And I would also go look at your boss and think about what are things that I can do that would help make my boss's job easier, or help make my boss look really good to their boss. Okay? Those are the two biggest things. Before we get into talking about how to actually ask for a raise, those are the two biggest things. A, getting clear on KPIs, and B, going above and beyond what you are asked of, that are going to help ensure that when it comes to you asking for a raise, that you actually have a good chance of getting that. Okay? The third piece I'm going to throw into that is to really track your impact throughout the entirety of your role. So this is really great for two reasons. One is that if you decide to leave or if you get laid off, the fact that you made it a practice to track all the work that you've done and the impact will make it a lot easier for you to go and update your portfolio, update your resume, and remember all the things you did so you can speak about them in interviews. But also, if you're planning on staying at the company, that's going to really help because you're going to be able to show those numbers in your performance review and be able to use them as a reason as to why you should get a raise. Oftentimes we forget to do this. And I work with a lot of girls on building their portfolios, and they're like, oh my gosh, I know I had a big impact here, but that was a year ago. That was 2 years ago. I forget the numbers. I don't have access to those screenshots anymore or those assets anymore. So making it a practice to really track your impact will also be really, really helpful in going up and asking for a raise. Okay, so it gets to the time you're going to ask for a raise. You feel really confident that you spent the last year really focusing on the KPIs that mattered. You didn't just meet them, you exceeded them, and you did more than what your role entails, right? You went above and beyond, you did more than what your role entails, and you tried wherever you could to make your boss's life easier or to make your boss, look good to their boss by going up, again, this above and beyond theme we're seeing here, and it goes to ask for the raise. This part I feel like is the most uncomfortable part, and I feel like the part where we get the most nervous. And my biggest advice is to just be direct and then shut up. Okay? Embrace the silence. Oftentimes we over-explain ourselves. We speak too much. We just start to ramble because we're so nervous about what we're about to ask. But go through the review. Come prepared with areas that you already feel like you can improve or not. If your company doesn't do performance reviews and that's not when you're going to ask for a raise, maybe it's like a meeting that you set, I would just be really direct. I would phrase it in a really positive way. Like, I've really loved working here. I really love the impact that I've had. I'm approaching a year and I really wanted to talk about my growth here at the company and getting a raise. I've prepared just like some stuff that I want to go over with you to showcase the impact I've had over the past year and why I believe I deserve this. And then they'll probably be like, okay. And then you can go through what you've done and why you deserve it. And again, the biggest thing is really trying as much as you can to tie back what you've done to the goals that you and your manager talked about the entire year that were most important, how you've helped grow the company, and not just about the work that you've done. That is, again, I really feel like the biggest mistake is that if we feel like we just did more work, that we deserve a raise, but it's really about how that ties into helping the company grow. So connecting those dots, showing the impact that you've had and quantifying it as much as possible. You can even make a deck. You can even make just like a short little 10-slide deck, 5-slide deck, 3-slide deck. It can be really short. Don't go give them a 30-minute presentation, right? This can be just like a 5-10-minute deck that you go through and you can kind of show them why. Now, sometimes if your boss is unprepared for this, they may be unprepared to give you the raise that you're about to ask for. So the first time that this happens, it's your first year and you're going and you're asking, they may say yes or no. So they may give it to you, they may not give it to you. Irregardless of if they give it to you or not, I really want you to ask, okay, for the next year, I really want to keep on this growth trajectory if they do give it to you. Or if they don't give it to you, that's really where I want to be. Can we talk about exactly what I need to do to make sure that I get there next year? And I want you to get your boss to say exactly what you need to do to get to that next step that you want the following year. Now, this is super important to actually get them to say it, because then in a year, you can go back and use their exact words and exactly what they said and show and say, hey, I did exactly what you asked me to do. This is no longer something that's ambivalent. This is something that you specifically said that I should do. So you need to ask your boss, what are the things, the steps that I need to do to get there? And ask them, okay, I'm going to take notes. So write it all out, okay? And you're going to email it to them immediately after that meeting. So you're going to go through it. If they're not ready and they say they need to think about it, then you could say, okay, when should we meet to talk about this next? You could put a meeting on the calendar, meet. But the most important thing is that you write it down and you email it to your boss because you want that proof. This is, again, especially important at larger companies and even smaller companies. I've had girls that I worked with in the past that will get hired under the false promise that they're going to get a promotion in 6 months. And then that never happens because it wasn't in writing. So you're going to write it out in the email. You're going to send it to your boss. And you're going to make sure that whenever you do your weekly or your monthly reviews with your boss, that you talk about those things that you've listed. If you do not have scheduled like quarterly reviews or like weekly one-on-ones or whatever that looks like with your boss, then that's also your responsibility to implement those if your boss isn't already doing that. And you're going to meet and talk about those things so that when it comes for you asking for a raise, it's not a surprise. They already know that you want it, and you're going to come prepared by showing them exactly how you not only met but exceeded their expectations for you to get that raise. All right? Now, again, the biggest mistake I see is that people just wake up one day unsatisfied with their salary, unsatisfied that their boss hasn't presented them with a raise, and haven't communicated this to their boss in the past. So the best thing you can do is let your boss know, like, I am really ambitious. I really want to grow. I really want to raise in a year, and I'm willing to do the work to get that. It would be really helpful if you could, or if we could talk about the steps that I need to do to get there. And you can also ask that in your first year of the job. A month in, like, I'm really excited. I'm really loving this. I really want to grow here. Can we talk about the steps that I need to do to make sure that in a year that, I can keep growing in salary and title? Let them know. It's just like a relationship. Okay? If you're dating somebody and you are too afraid to ask them if they're looking for something long-term or short-term, you could be totally wasting your time. if you want the relationship and that's what you're dating for, then you should tell the person you're dating, like, that's what I want. And I think we're really afraid to do that in today's day and age. And I mean, when we're talking about raises, in an ideal scenario, you would get a raise every year without having to ask, and your boss would set up, the quarterly reviews and they would lead that for you. However, that's just not the case at every company, unfortunately. Ideally, it would be. Ideally, your boss would be really clear about it and present it, and you wouldn't have to ask for those things. But it's really important to get comfortable with those uncomfortable conversations, because talking about money is very uncomfortable for a lot of us. I know it was very uncomfortable for me. I vividly remember the first time I asked for a raise, my skin turned tomato red. I talked about how one day I wanted to have a family and I would need to be able to afford that. And I was like 21 years old, and I don't even it still traumatizes me to this day. I can vividly remember this conversation and how awkward and uncomfortable I was. So get used to those conversations. Be really vocal about what you want. Don't be afraid to tell people. Tell your boss exactly what you want and how you want to grow. If you want to raise, say it. Don't say it in a complaining way. Say it in a really positive way. If you've been noticing the examples I've given, it's just I really love working here. I really want to grow here in both responsibility and salary, and that you're really excited to put in the work to do that. And I think if you phrase it positively like that, and you phrase it in a way of you're not just expecting to get a raise, but that you really want to put in the effort, they should match that. And if a company doesn't, and if a company says, hey, that's not really a possibility for us, or if you get to a year and you had been vocal, you had done all the things that they told you to do, and they don't give you that raise, then you also don't have to stay at that company. If you feel like you are overworked and underpaid, and you feel like it's genuine, you feel like you've really tried and you're just not getting raises, you've been there for 1, 2, 3 years, you haven't gotten a raise, and they keep saying they're going to give it to you and then they don't give it to you, and their actions are different than their words, you can pull this back to dating again, right? Do you want to date somebody that's going to keep telling you everything that you want to hear but doesn't actually follow through? No, you don't want to date that type of person. So you also don't have to stay and work for that type of company either. You have the power to leave as well. But if you don't ask and you're not clear and you're not willing to meet what they're telling you that you need to, then you also have to take some accountability on your end as well. I'm not sure if everything I'm saying is a controversial take, but it's something that I really do believe in. And it's something that, after talking to lots of women on this podcast, so many times I've talked about the importance of vocalizing your career goals. It is so important. You cannot expect to get things you don't ask for in life. You just can't. So ask for what you want. Get clear on what you need to do to get there. I would always use this analogy when teaching the accelerator about how in college I felt like I got good grades, not because I worked harder than the other people in my class, but because I would go talk to the professor and get really clear on what the professor wanted from an assignment. And the importance of truly understanding the question before providing an answer. I think ChatGPT is also a great analogy for this, right? Where the answers you get from ChatGPT are very different depending on how specific and clear you are with the prompt, right? We're hearing this phrase, prompt engineering, how there might be prompt engineers in the future, and the importance of prompting ChatGPT correctly to get the right answer. And it truly is the same when it comes to the work that you do. You could work so hard. You could work 80 hours a week, but you have to work on the things that matter. You can't just be busy all the time. Being busy doesn't mean that you're being productive or effective. And so getting really clear on what actually matters is so important. Telling people, not just your boss, but other people, where you want to grow, how you want to grow, going above and beyond and doing things that aren't asked of you. Those are all things that are going to get noticed. But again, you have to ask for it. All right. So that is my advice for you girls on asking for a raise. It truly starts the day you get the job. It doesn't start the day that you ask for the raise. It starts right away. Make sure that you are getting really clear on the KPIs that matter. Make sure that you are going above and beyond what's asked of you, and make sure you are telling your boss that you want this raise in advance. It's a lot better for them if you don't tell them the day of, but you're more vocal of it in advance, because then you both can get really clear on what you need to do. So when that day comes, they're ready for you to ask, and you've done the things that they need for them to give you that raise. So be vocal about what you want. Get used to these uncomfortable conversations, because the more you get used to them, the more opportunity you are going to unlock for yourself in your career. And I promise you, it's going to help you move so much farther, so much faster. It's also going to help you feel a lot more valued at your role. So I hope you use some of these things. I hope that you get the courage today to ask for a raise. If it's been a while and you haven't asked, or you've been afraid to ask, just ask. Because again, at least you're going to have clarity if it's a possibility for you, right? They're going to let you know that we would love to do that. We can do it right now, or we would love to do that. This is the timeline for it. And make sure, again, that you get really clear. So if they say no, you need to ask them, like, okay, what do I need to do to get there? And what timeline is feasible for me to get that raise? And you want both of those things in writing so that you can hold them to that and hold yourself to that. But again, something that's super important to me, especially for women bridging the age gap, I think a huge part of it stems from us being, confident in ourselves and asking for the things that we want and not being afraid to do that. One of the first guests that I interviewed, I remember she told me how when she interviews men and women and she asks them what are their salary requirements, men are generally more direct in stating exactly what they want, what they want their benefits to look like, what they want their bonuses to look like. And oftentimes women will deflect and give a vague answer, and how it is so important for us as women to not be afraid to ask for what we want, to ask for what we deserve. And so I hope today's episode has inspired you to do that. I hope it will give you a new perspective when you start your job on how to start it in a way that you're setting yourself up for success for more raises in the future. And if you do have a job and you have been wanting to ask for a raise for a while, I hope today's episode was helpful. If you have any other questions, share them in our LinkedIn group, Sky Society Women in Marketing. And I think that's going to wrap up today's episode. I'll be back next week with another incredible guest, and I will be back with more of these solo episodes. If there's something that you want to see, again, let us know on LinkedIn what you want to see more of, or let us know in the comments on Spotify. We also check those out as well. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you next Tuesday.